Welcome, Love Tubers. Thank you for joining me today. If you're new to the platform, I am reading about the science of money. And we are on chapter 6. And so far, we have covered what is money, the myths about money, the science of spending, the science of debt, the science of generating income. We are now going to discuss the science of creating wealth. And these will all be on the playlist later. I've already started the playlist. Um, I've got to decorate a few things. I believe I got to put the rest to 5, but um, yeah, we're on 6, the science of creating wealth. Earlier in the myths about money, we discussed how most wealthy people don't focus on the acquisition of money, they focus on creating wealth. This is a major distraction because in treating money as a scientific discipline, we naturally would assume that money is a thing to be acquired, but in reality is a means of exchange of value. Good truth here. A byproduct of productive activity. In this chapter, Brian will clarify this difference. He will discuss how entrepreneurs, investors, authors, and other creative professionals become some of the highest paid people on the planet through creativity and innovation. Dan. In this discussion, we move to a higher level of the science of money. We might call it this the graduate level. Woohoo. The earlier sessions dealt with ideas that, if employed, can lead to a financial secure and potentially financial free life. But if one desires great wealth, what the press refers to as the top 1%, then you have to think bigger by either adding value or creating new value. Talk about the difference between competitive mindset, where you compete against others to achieve success, versus the creative mindset, where you add value and create a whole new category. Also, explain why the latter pays so much better and is ultimately so much more secure. Ooh, I can't wait to reap the benefits there. Brian. Both the competitive and creative mindsets are very important. As I said before, we live in a highly creative world where everybody wants to have a better standard of living. This explains everything that's happening with regard to the US and Canada, and on the other hand, in China, Taiwan, Vietnam, and Indonesia. On the other, the countries that are producing products at a much lower cost than we are. It's because they are acting on behalf of the customers of America who want to pay the very least for the very most. IBM used to be the world giant in personal computers. They set a goal to have 50% of the market in 5 years. They had it in 2 years. Today, IBM has sold 100% of its computer business to Livono in China, and China manufactures all IBM PCs plus PCs for half the rest of the world because they can make high quality PCs at a much lower price than we can. Competition, competition, competition. It never stops. Some people do get into the top 1% or the top 0.01% or 0.001%, but the odds are extraordinary. 99 to 1, so they require an enormous number of factors to come together simultaneously. Excuse me. Most people get rich slowly, and they get rich starting off with a single product. I've studied this for years. You start off with a single product and you make that product successful. There's a series of stages that you're going to need to go through. Let us say you want to start a business and you want to be financially successful, and ultimately you want to be wealthy so that you can retire. That's very good and very healthy, and imminently achievable, the first thing you do is you say, what would be my product? That's number one. You define your product in terms of your value offering. That'd be number two. The value offering is what difference would this product make in the lives of my customer? That's product three. I think I'm going to change some things on my Amazon page. The two critical factors for business success, according to Jim Collins in his book Good to Great, are first of all, you must have a product or service that matters. It must make a difference. It must mean something. It must be something that people want and need and care about. I think I'll make something with a rainbow. If you have a product that doesn't matter, the only way you can sell it is on the basis of clever advertising and reduced prices. But if you have something that's really important to people, you can charge more and people will pay more. The second factor is it must be different and superior. It must be so clear that people will prefer to choose that of all the similar products that are available. A perfect example is the Apple iPhone. When the Apple iPhone came out, the world leaders were BlackBerry, which had 49% of the world business market, and Nokia. I have been a Nokia girl, never had a BlackBerry, which had 49% of the world's cell phone market overall. They both dismissed the iPhone as a toy. That's an expensive phone to be dismissing as a toy. But Apple realized that if you could combine all the different things that people wanted to be able to do, send pictures, send messages, download messages, check out restaurants, use applications, and so on, combine them all in one place, plus take photographs and record music, you could create something nobody else had done before. Excuse me. The giants of the industry, BlackBerry and Nokia, dismissed this as a toy, said it was only for teenagers, and nobody was really going to want it. They would always be a market for good, stable, old handset. 5 years later, they were bankrupt. I asked my gosh, wow. Don't believe what folks tell you. I asked my audience this question. Let's talk about something that matters. Have you ever gotten in your car and driven a few blocks or halfway to work and realized you left your phone at home? And I'll ask 1,000 people this and they'll nod. I'll say, what did you do? Everybody says, turned around and went back. That's something that matters. That is something that's so important that if you realize that you're without it, you go back and you'll get it. Like my charger the other day that didn't show up at the library. That's okay, I had backups ready. You have to have a product that matters, a product that makes a difference in people's lives. The value offering always says, what job does your product do that people are willing to pay your product to do for them? What problem does your product solve that is so pressing that people will pay you money? What benefit does your product give that is so important that people will sacrifice in order to own it? What goal does it help them to achieve? What pain does it take away? It's amazing how many products and services are bland. They don't answer these questions, and as a result, they always fail. Once you have your product idea, the second thing is you have to test it. Today we're finding the best test is a customer test. Like a customer leaves a review. You ask, who would be the ideal person for my product idea? Who would buy it the earliest and pay the most for it? Then you go to one or more of these customers and you talk to them personally. This is the revolution that's taking place in market today. This is good to know because I did not know that we do all these steps. The customer test. Let me put review here with a little heart. Customer test, ideal person, who would buy early. You talk to them. 4. I'm gonna also put revolution. In the old days, companies would put together a new product and then announce it like a surprise, like the debut of a movie hitting the screens for the first time. Today, more and more companies go to a potential customer and say, I think this product would fit for you to help you improve the quality of your life or work. So they make it more personable. Personable. Okay. What do you think? Your customers will give you feedback and they'll say, I like this, but I don't like that. And I like this, but I don't like that. And if you offered more of this, offered more, or less of that, then you go back and adjust the product, which is what I did with my book, one of the books. Excuse me. It's very similar to coming up with a new recipe. You have your family taste the recipe and ask, what do you think of this? I can relate to that. It's too salty, or it's too hot, or it's too sweet, or it's too something. You go back and you tinker with the recipe until everybody says it's really great. Now you know you've got it. That's what's happening today in marketing. It's called customer co creation. Ooh. When you come up with a product idea and ask how this product can improve the life or work of your customer, you go to the potential customers and you work with them hand in hand until the customer absolutely agrees. Yes, this is a great product and I will pay you money now to be able to get it when you have it complete. The only thing that really matters is a financial transaction. I told you the name of the game was survival and coins. He says it right here in different words. Personal acts that give you money. It's not only that they say it's good, but they actually will give you money so that they are first in line. Oh, I need a whole line. Think of the Apple releases where people line up in the streets 3 days in advance and sleep there. What are them Michael Jordan shoes? I think folks was outside or Black Friday sales, or when people was giving away free stuff at like Chick-fil-A. They'd sleep overnight to get the stuff. Understood. With other people bringing them food and taking their place so they can go to the bathroom, I talk to business people and ask how many people do that when you come out with a new product, and they just laugh. They say none, zero, ever. He's absolutely correct. We're working on that. So first you test the product to make sure that there's a market for it. Then you offer it in limited release and find out how much you can charge for it. Limited release. And then you start to roll it out and you develop a business model that enables you to get the most of your product or service to the greatest number of customers at the best price in the shortest period of time. Then you simply multiply that process and do it over and over again. You feel like you're talking to half the screen. All right, that's basically how people start a successful business. If you are lucky, you're going to come up with a product or a service that is revolutionary. But it's only then that you're going to move it into the higher levels where you make an enormous amount of money. Bill Gates' Microsoft software was a revolutionary. It became the de facto software for computers worldwide. Here's an interesting point. Bill Gates did not create the software. He actually bought Microsoft software from someone who had developed it and then improved it dramatically. He decided to throw his software open to all developers in the world so that anybody could code and develop software built on the Microsoft platform. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates both started at the same time in the early 1980s, and Steve Jobs decided to keep the maximum amount of profits possible by closing off the architecture and making it proprietary. Within 10 years, Bill Gates had 90% of the market and Apple was down to 2%. Even though many people said that Apple's was a superior computer, easier to use, more user friendly, more beautiful, and everything else, but they had the wrong business model. When they brought out the iPhone in 2006, again, they said, we're going to develop the apps. So the Apple developed a few apps That's cute. But they were finally convinced that they should open up the architecture and let other people develop them. They admitted that they just didn't have the resources to develop a large number of apps. Steve Jobs fought against this for a long time. Finally, he agreed to open the architecture to app developers. This was one of the greatest business decisions in history. It generated hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. It made Apple the richest company in the world, made their share value unbelievable. They have 200 billion in the bank right now after tax money. Everything hinged on that one twitch in the business model: open the architecture. Bill Gates was already the richest man in the world because he had opened the architecture right at the beginning. Sometimes you'll take a product or service and combine it with a unique or different way of marketing that will transform the business. Different way of marketing. Different way of marketing. Okay. Roy Kroc came up with the idea that when he saw the McDonald brothers and their hamburger stand in San Bernardino, he sold markers, and his company kept buying more and more milkshake markers. I've never heard of this story. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a. I think I'll be all right. So he went down to see them and he was quite amazed. They had a production line producing really high quality hamburgers, French fries, and malts. Well, I miss back in the day when they had malts. Hello, darling. Obaya, Bernie, Yiva, and Abla Aziza. Hola. All right. He said, this is a great idea. They have taken this traditional hamburger joint thing and they've turned it into a machine. People were lined up, cars were coming from everywhere, and they were making a fortune. He went to the brothers and said, do you want to go into business with me? They said, sure. So we'll start a business, we'll share the ownership. I think it was 50-50. And I'll take your entire system back to my head office in Des Plaines, Illinois, and I'll duplicate it. Okay. So this is how McDonald's got started. Nice. Welcome, love tubers. Kroc wanted to expand and he went back to the McDonald brothers. He said he wanted to expand, but he had to borrow. Did y'all know the beginning of McDonald's and how it started? I didn't. He had to borrow money and he'd have to take out mortgages. They said, no, no, no. They didn't want to do any of that. They were just a couple of nice guys in San Bernardino, a farming community, he said. Then let me buy out the name and the concept. They sold it to him for peanuts. The rest is history. They had no clue how big their idea was going to be. The company became successful and Ray Kroc became one of the richest people. And that was the beginning of McDonald's. Okay. Here's another interesting point. People say they want to franchise their deals. I hear this a lot from entrepreneurs. People been in my DM on LinkedIn talking about, do I want a franchise? I have not answered them back. I hear this a lot from entrepreneurs. It takes approximately 7 or 8 years to sell the first franchise operation. It takes 7 or 8 years to get your business so standardized that it's a guaranteed money machine and it works like a Swiss watch. So you can open the doors and it just pumps out profits all day. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that yet. I'm going to keep going. Then to prove that you have a system, you simply start another one and you duplicate it almost like a MOBA or cloning. You clone and you create a second one and you install all the same systems, you make them identical. You don't deviate to see if this also becomes a money machine. If they become identical money machines, you know you have something. Then you do a third and a fourth. But most people don't do this until after the eighth year because it takes 7 years. We talked about this. The 7 year cycle. Before you get all the bugs out of the system, only then can you duplicate all the bugs. All the bugs. When Bill Gates got into trouble with Microsoft, he was licensing the software for IBM PCs to IBM. But then Microsoft got into financial trouble, as happens in recessions. Gates went to IBM and said, "Look, rather than you paying me a royalty each time you install Microsoft on a PC, why don't you pay me 350,000 and I'll sell it to you?" Let's see how this turns out. They said, "No, we're not in the business of owning software. Thank you so much. But we have no interest in buying Microsoft for $350,000. Can you imagine that? So he had to make the company work, and he did. Today, Microsoft could buy and sell IBM before breakfast without even making a blip on their financial statements. I always wonder what great genius at IBM made that decision. But this was a fluke. Now we look at Bill Gates and say, wow, the richest man in the world, he almost wasn't. Ray Kroc gambled everything too. The McDonald's man made a gamble. Peter Drucker said, whatever you see a successful business, Peter Drucker. Somebody once took a big chance and won. Self-made billionaires, that's a big difference, isn't it? Are people who started with nothing and have made $1 billion in their lifetime. They said that the first quality is hard work and self-discipline. The second quality is continuous learning, which we see with Warren Buffett. The third quality is willingness to take a risk. At a certain point, they were willing to go all in, like Texas Hold'em, and push all their chips in for one card. They were willing to do that, and the right card came along. That's how you get into the top 0.001%. Whew. There is no story of anybody who didn't go all in but still became a billionaire. Of the many people who did go all in, the great majority lost everything and had to start over again. When we talk about the top 1% versus 99%, they all start off the same, with the same natural abilities, no earning ability, no money, maybe a good or bad education, or maybe not, and so on. How did these particular people get into the top 1%? I found that it's not the top 1%, it's the top 3%. It's the top 3% who have clear, specific written goals and plans that they work on, just as an architect designs an absolutely beautiful building and continually refines the blueprints. They work on written goals and plans, and these are the top 3%. As you know from the studies, these people earn 10 times as much as the average. They acquire 10 times as much. They have much better lives because they have written goals and plans. So it's not the 1% versus 99%. It's the 3% versus the 97%. Thank you so much for that enlightenment, Brian. We have all been thinking over here on the 99% that it is 1%. That is incorrect. Hmm. They studied this at the American Management Association. They found that the successful people are not smarter, they don't have higher IQs, they didn't graduate with better grades, they didn't go to better colleges, they just did certain things differently. And one was that they had written goals and plans. When they started their own businesses, they wrote out very clear business plans. Then, step by step, they created checklists to find products or services that would work for them. Okay, he's giving the blueprint. I worked with some really good guys who decided to get into MLM, known as multi level marketing business. They spent 18 months going around the country and looked at all the MLM businesses, of which there are hundreds. Tried the products of all of them, and they finally found one that they really liked. This was just perfect for them. It was ideal in terms of their interest. They liked the product, and so they signed on. They joined this MLM business. They had gone broke in the business before and that hadn't worked out. They started again, and this time they became multimillionaires because they did their homework. Is he gonna tell us? I want to know. The first time they went into business, they had just run into pell mell like dogs chasing cars. I hope he explains what pell mell is. This time they sat down and they wrote goals. It must mean rushed. They said, "What did you learn from the last business? What kind of product can we sell with pride?" Isn't that a lovely word? I just talked about pride in the last video. What kind of product that will people will buy over and over again? They went through this carefully and then they took a look at every product available with their checklist until they finally found one. Then they experimented with it on a small scale and then they became huge successes. I know. I spoke with them and worked with them. To become really wealthy is very rare, but you can dramatically increase the odds in your favor by doing careful planning in advance and thinking it through. As they say, don't lose money. Think it through carefully and invest your time and your effort to study every detail of the business before you put your money in and make an irrevocable commitment. Oh, I wish I would have known a long time ago. Let's keep going. We need to treat our relationships the same as it's talking about, like in this book. Um, like it's talking about with money, we need to treat some of our relationships like that as well. Study every detail of the business before you put your money and make it an irrevocable commitment. All right, let's keep going. Dan, the most common way people do this is what Michael Gerber, let circle him and put a little question mark, calls a system entrepreneur. This is someone who focuses on working on the system so that it can replicate and create greater value as opposed to an entrepreneur who just works on his or her craft in his or her small business. System entrepreneur. Mmm, that sounds delicious. Discuss the difference between these two kind of entrepreneurs. That was Dan. Brian. First of all, very few business products are franchisable. Hmm. The product has to be consumable. It has to be something that people buy over and over. It has to be something superior about it compared to all the other similar products. There has to be a whole lot of things going on. Consumable. Okay. Second, to make a business successful for the first time, as we said, takes 7 years. And you have to work in that business and put your whole heart into the business. The people who came up with the idea of work on the business rather than in the business have never built a successful business in their lives, and they still have not. Nobody that ever took advice from them has ever built a successful business either. Mm. I had a good friend who fell in love with the idea of working on the business rather than in the business. He said, I followed that advice hook, line, and sinker. He said, until I was broke, then I went back to working in the business. I had a good friend who teaches business management. I was talking to him, and he said every successful business owner works in the business. There are no exceptions. He said, look at Bill Gates, perhaps the most successful single business owner in the history of man. He works in his business as chief architect officer all the time. He is in there with both hands. He has passed on the day to day management, the supervision, the CEO, COO, but he's in his business all, 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 all the time and always has been. From this time he was 12 years old, he had been working intimately with both hands in the business. 12 years old is a long time. I had a management consultant friend who had studied business for over 12 years. He studied hundreds of businesses trying to look at the one quality that made businesses successful, and his opinion was it was hands on management. He wrote a book on it. The owners did their rounds like a doctor checking the patient in a hospital. They take the pulse, they look at the eyes, mouth, face, the blood pressure. The doctor got his hands on the patient the whole time. Okay, I can relate to that. Starting the business is very much like an emergency situation. If you go to the emergency room, you'll find the doctors and nurses are right there. They got their hands on the patient all the time because this is the critical moment. I was reading something on the wall of a hospital some time ago which said that with stroke, the first 30 minutes determine whether or not in 30 minutes this person will live or walk or think or anything else. You've got to move fast. Here are the symptoms of a stroke. Here's what you do immediately. Here's where to go. It's like starting a business. When you start a business, it's red alert time. Every day is an exciting day because it can make or break a business, an accumulation of bad days with no money coming in, no profits, no sales, and you go underwater. You have to have your hands on the business to make it successful. Anybody who says that you don't is a person who has never had a successful business. As you know from your own experience, if you want to be successful, you've got to put your whole heart into it. You can increase the odds that you will be successful, but you can never guarantee them. There are no guarantees. Dan, when we talk about creating wealth, we are talking about a different mindset than the mindset we hear about in the media. The media assume that there is a fixed pie of resources for which we all compete. We might call this scarcity mentality. Whereas the science of money teaches us that money is not divided but rather created. We might call this abundance mentality. Talk about the difference between these two types of personalities. We're getting to the nitty gritty today. Hello. All right. Brian, it's a great question. For all of human history, the only way that wealth was usually transferred was through plunder. People owned estates that they had taken by plunder. The dukes and barons and earls and kings and so on. The villagers were required to pay a tribute into the forms of 10 or 20% of their crops to the people who owned the land. They then took those crops and sold them. That was their major source of revenue. That's where we get our taxation today. Oh, taxes. I got a tax appointment set up for Friday. It comes from the work of people toiling on the land. The barons would live in these fabulous castles and have fabulous lives. They would march out with jewels beyond belief when the average person was eating dirt and having to pay 10% or 20% of their earnings. This is what led to Robin Hood and all the other similar myths of Europe. Myths. As we mentioned earlier, virtually all war is plunder. It's robbing and plundering and loitering and taking everything you possibly can. It is war. I talked about war earlier. Ayn Rand, I hope I said that right. Ayn is the first name, Rand is the second name. Talks about the development of capitalism in the late 17th century, the early 1800s, and especially after the Napoleonic Wars, which ended in 1815. I get to learn about capitalism today and when it started, huh? She said that for the first time in human history, the expression to make money was developed. Making money meant that you could bring together resources, raw materials, labor, and eventually machinery. You could actually create wealth where no wealth had existed before. So, resources, raw materials, labor, machinery, then wealth creation. That's 5 steps. For 100 years, the U.S. was the preeminent place in the world for actually making money. You created money out of nothing. You grew stuff out the ground. You pull stuff out the ground. You took human labor. You cut down trees. You smelted the steel or wove the clothing. You created the machinery. You created wealth from raw materials and labor. A good friend of mine, who's now one of the richest men in the world, wrote a book. He said that man's material welfare, MMW, is the equivalent of tools times time or money. There should have been some comma or something there, but that's okay. Whatever. I'm getting the message. He basically said that man's material welfare comes from tools, which cost an enormous amount of money to develop, multiplied times labor. This has never really changed. Today, to create one job in retail costs $100,000. That's for one job in retail. And to create one job in petrochemical engineering costs $500,000. To create a job in every single industry, there's an amount of money that has to be invested, which is why I'm filling out grants. That amount of money has to be invested by someone who has saved it from expenditure. Capitalism is really saving isms. Wherever there are high levels of savings, there are high levels of capital available to be invested in new businesses and opportunities, which can create wealth and jobs and create possibilities for the future. Creating wealth means that you're finding new ways to serve other people. You're finding ways to enhance the lives and work of other people. In such a way that will willingly, eagerly pay you for your product or service. Then simultaneously you have to compete because everybody else wants the same customers because they also want to create the same wealth and they also want to enjoy the same standards of living. Mm. Ooh, the light bulb. The abundance mentality says there are unlimited opportunities because human beings have unlimited wants. This is one of the most important principles I've ever learned. As long as there are human wants unfulfilled and human problems unsolved and human needs that have not been taken care of, there will always be opportunities for the creative minority. So you have 3 areas: unfulfilled human wants, You got human problems. You got taking care of needs. So that's three areas. Problem solving. Dan. One thing that often keeps people from creating tremendous wealth is the level of risk to which they must expose themselves. Discuss the risks that must be taken to achieve the highest category defining levels of success like that of Mark Zuckerberg, Warren Buffett, or Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx. I have no clue what Spanx is. Spanx. I like the word though. Just a minute. I know Mark, Facebook, Warren Buffett, and all his companies. Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx. I'm not familiar with her. Spanx. Okay, Sarah. They're leggings. Spanx. Wardrobe. She's got good taste. Never heard of Spanx till now. Okay. Wardrobe. Is it worth taking that level of risk? Can people who have more modest aspirations still create tremendous value? Brian, let's take the three examples. Mark Zuckerberg came up with this idea in his dorm room of linking boys and girls at Harvard by putting their profiles up on a website while he was at Harvard. You saw a girl or guy, you go and check them out. Is that why this was originally created? Facebook? Interesting. They called it the Facebook. People go and check out the faces of people at Harvard. It was a great idea. More people started doing it and people started to come on. They wouldn't make any money at it at all. It was just a project for the geeks. Pretty soon, everybody at Harvard was on it because if you wanted to be socially active, if you wanted people to know about you and what you're interested in, you would go on this site. People started to share messages back and forth. It was so successful at Harvard that someone from Yale said, "Can you do a Yale Facebook?" They said, "Sure." So they took the same technology and used it to create another Facebook. Then they realized people who weren't at college would like this as well. It grew by accident. Hello, Love Tuber. Everybody wanted to be able to communicate online with other people and share stories and pictures and so on. It was a very primitive at the beginning, and it was just a fluke of luck that they happened to develop a technology that went viral. Imagine there are 1.2 billion people on it now.
Press the switch on the wall there. And then I'm showing him how to turn this on.
Oh, okay. Give us a moment, y'all. Thank you for your patience.
Come over here and these are taps.
Oh, okay.
Here we go. And once you do that, then you have this button to turn it on.
Okay.
You can also use that to turn it on.
All right.
And then you can.
And then what's it? Is it always set the same
It's
thing?
staying warm
It
here in
depends.
Indianapolis.
Some people may come and crank it up. So.
Okay. Okay.
But it's not.
I don't feel no heat
because the
I don't feel no heat.
the heat the sensor registers the heat that's coming up from this vent on the floor.
Oh.
And so if this is set to be a temperature that's lower than this, but it should be, yeah, if you put it up, your hand up sort of at the top, it's starting to put out a little heat.
How you turn the heat up?
Come over here.
Oh, I got to do it over there?
Yep.
I ain't trying to roast nobody. Be right back, y'all.
That isn't how to undo it. Okay. Yeah. All right. So right now it thinks the temperature is 75, and here it's going to try to take it up to 80.
And then it'll come out of the floor.
It may come out of the floor, but actually I think it usually comes out up in here because I can feel some heat right through there. But I don't know if it will take it a little bit.
And it'll turn off by itself. The screen will turn off by itself.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's got a little power button. Okay. Thank you. That is beautiful. I hear it. I hear it. I hear the heat. Can you feel the heat?
Well, you start getting hot, you know.
Okay. Then turn it back down. Okay. As many as 1 billion people use Facebook each day. We're about to have you know what? 1 billion people. Actually, this book was written a few years ago. Facebook traffic count. 2.09 billion. Wait a minute. 16.6 billion visits. That was December. And 3 billion monthly active users. 16.6, 3 billion active. This is phenomenal. It was a real stroke of luck because before Facebook, there had been other social media sites. MySpace just disappeared. Yes, because I used to use MySpace. I haven't even tried to go look for MySpace. The last time I was on a MySpace page, Solange had just came out with a song called I Have Decided. And I don't even remember whose MySpace page that was. I was just on it listening to that song because I liked it. We've come a long way since then. All right, let's keep it moving. Warren Buffett took a course at Columbia from a man named Ben Graham. Ben Graham was the father of value investing. He said that you have to look really deeply into the fundamentals of a company to find out if the product or service that it sells really generates value for the customer. They call this value creation and value capture. Value creation has to do with the customer because the product enhances their lives greatly in excess of the amount of money they pay. Enhances their lives greatly. Value capture is capturing part of the value that you create for other people. I will say I have learned a lot of terminology in this book in regards to money. Graham taught this philosophy of looking at business in terms of their underlying value and how these companies offer greater or better or different value than their competitors in similar industries. Simultaneously, he asked, who were the people in the company? Were they good managers? Were they astute developers of new products? Were they ambitious and always looking for ways to improve the product? There was and is a combination of value creation factors. So he He's talking about the competition. That was four questions. Warren Buffett grew up in a nice family. His father was stationed in Washington, and when Warren was about 14 years old, they didn't have much money. So he got a job delivering newspapers in the morning. I'm learning more about my old boss than I had even thought I would. He got 1 penny for every newspaper he delivered. He was careful with his money, so his parents paid all of his expenses. He got a penny for every newspaper delivered. For the next 2 years, he delivered more than 200,000 newspapers. Wow. He said and with his $2,000, he started a business. $2,000. He followed Ben Graham's idea, invest in companies and offer products and services that people like and want, and which are considered superior to the competitors' products and which generate profits. Then take those profits one, two, three, four. Take those profits and channel them into buying other companies that are also selling products or services that people are generating profits. Then take the larger five, then take the larger profit stream and repeat. Six. He kept doing that to the point where today he's the most successful investor. It's a very simple concept. Buffett took the course accidentally with Ben Graham, but it set him at a young age. It gave him the fixed idea of how to invest, and he never deviated from that idea. Never. All over America and the world, there are now what they call Buffett billionaires. There were people, doctors, lawyers, salespeople, business owners in Omaha that knew Warren. He was a nice young guy in his 20s, starting off investing his own $2,000 and did pretty well. So they said, Warren, would you invest my money as well? He said, sure. You never hear of these people, but some of them are worth 5 billion and 6 billion because they got in with Warren when he was a young guy investing money. Now let's take Sarah Blakely, who invented Spanx. I love that name. She had the same concern that many women have, which is they want to look good. She looked around and found that there were all kinds of undergarments for women, but none that were using the kind of plastic size technology that was available that would actually make them look firm. She found that no one else was going to do this. That's how Sarah Blakely started Spanx. They had a variety of different products and she came up with some great ideas. She developed her own models and had them manufactured. Then she had to go from store to store and get the stores and boutiques to sell them on consignment. Not a bad idea. Finally, people started to buy them and it started to take off. At the very beginning, she had to work her bum off. If you like to get people to carry the product, it turned out to be the right product at the right time. She was a smart businesswoman. She got really good designers and she still designs every product herself. That I love. As a result, the company went ballistic because there were so many people who wanted to buy the product, and she had such a great quality product. Today, Spanx is the best. It's considered the highest quality product. It's the same as Apple iPhones. People will pay much more for an iPhone than for a Samsung or some other phone because the iPhone is considered to be the premium product in the market. There's always a huge market for the premium product. She went to stores and boutiques to sell them on consignment. I wonder how much money she lost at the beginning. You don't say that, but that is my question. I guess you wouldn't call it a loss. I guess you would call it an investment. Excuse me, because she's getting a ROI or a return on her investment. Hmm. Dan, Brian, what should people take home from this discussion of creating wealth? Brian, the most important principle of all has to do with continuous improvement. Have you heard the formula? Kanei. Kane? Kana? Kan? Oh, I'm sorry. Canei. Hmm. Which stands for continuous and never ending improvement. The greatest enemy of success. Feel at home. I ain't heard that song in a long time, but that's what popped up, and I believe it was Vanessa Williams who sang that song. The comfort zone. You get home, you relax, and you get into the comfort zone. You become complacent. Many companies will come out of the gate with a great product. The product receives tremendous market acclaim. They sell a whole pile of it and then the competitors will pile in. It's an economic principle wherever there are higher than average potential profits, competitors will rush in with similar products or services to try to get a piece of those extra profits. I wrote an article on this many years ago that was published in all the newspapers called The Only Cure for High Prices is High Prices. People always complain when prices go up. Don't worry, because competitors will rush into the market and will create much more of the product. There will be an oversupply and then the prices will drop. They'll crash because people will be trying to move their overstock, so the higher the price, the faster competitors come in. The more they produce and the lower the eventual price. Okay, so this reminds me of the farmers market. If only one person has oranges, they can sell at a high prices. If everybody got oranges, then they got to lower the cost of the orange. Okay. But continuous and never ending improvement is the reason why some companies and individuals are incredibly successful. Every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. I'm learning more, getting better, learning more without knowing more than I knew when I got up in the morning. Yeah, that would be true. We never stop learning. I just got a message from my business partner who's been out of town for 3 days attending a very high level seminar workshop on digital marketing, which we have a great business in. He is so excited. Some of the smartest people in the country are sharing concepts in digital marketing that increases response rates, sales rates, repurchase rates. He is always buying marketing. He doesn't. Business marketing. He talks about some of these businesses, and then sometimes he drops some names, and then sometimes he don't drop any names. He's very cautious. It's no miracle. Continuous and never-ending improvement is the reason why companies get better and better and better, and make their products faster and better and cheaper and easier and more convenient. And he writes like he talks. If you keep pushing forward, constantly looking for ways to improve, you're going to hit something like a Spanx or a Facebook or a Microsoft. Keep pushing forward. Spanx, Facebook, or Microsoft. You're going to hit something that nobody has ever seen before. It's because you're out in front, taking risk, pushing the outer edge of the envelope, always looking for ways to make it better and better and better. At a certain point, God willing, and the river don't rise, as they say. If you're really fortunate, you could break through. That's how people go from struggling to becoming billionaires within one generation. Whew. Today's just Tuesday. We have concluded chapter 6, darlings, in regards to the science of creating wealth. This has been lovely and delicious. If you got a chance to tune in and stay a little bit, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you. And of course, I will start on chapter 7 tomorrow, the science of multiplying wealth. So we have now covered what is money, the myths of money, the science of spending, the science of debt, the science of generating income, and the science of creating wealth. We got 4 more chapters, y'all. That's what's up. Thank you for tuning in, Love Tubers. I greatly appreciate you, and I hope you have a magnificent rest of your Tuesday. Mwah.